we have some cards. If you have some questions, please fill out the card and hand it to either Sue or Riley or Laura. If you can raise your hands, they're there. You can give them a card, and we'll answer all the questions as time permits. After that, we'll have a Narcan demonstration. The Narcan is a nasal spray that can rapidly reverse an overdose. But I want to make it clear that the Narcan distribution is not a get-out-of-jail card. It's not to be used to feel free to use any drug. This is a last resort. It's a last resort to save lives. In fact, that's why we asked no one under 18 to be in the hall tonight. The Narcan is by no means an answer to the fentanyl crisis either. We're really just distributing the Narcan as a tool. It's a tool that we hope you'll never have to use, but it's a tool just like a spare tire in a car. It's there in case of an emergency. It's there to help you save the lives of your kids or your neighbor's kids. And that's the reason we're doing this tonight. Let me first start by acknowledging the elected officials that are here in the audience tonight. We've got City Santa Clarita City Council, Oregon West. And we also have representatives of Congressman Mike Garcia's office, State Senator Scott Wolf's office, and a Southern member of our Civilian's office. We start tonight with someone who has always been here in the Santa Clarita Valley for us. She does a fantastic job, and she's here tonight, our supervisor, LA County 5th District Supervisor, Kathleen Martin.
Well, what a powerful way to start a meeting. And I think that we can all use words, but when you see the names and the age of the people that this is impacting, I think it really drives home how important this is. And while we're a part of this, I want to thank Richard publicly. This is something that he brought forward. And the minute he called, and you put it together very quickly. I just can't take the fact that it's one dose. This is not an overdose. This is now more than ever, responding to the fentanyl crisis requires all local partners to do their part, working together. In 2019, LA County reported 462 deaths from fentanyl. By the most recent data report in 2021, that number was over 1,500, and I will guarantee you, when we get the numbers, it's going to far exceed that. I know in Santa Clarita alone, our sheriff partners identified at least 30 deaths from fentanyl. We can only expect these numbers to continue to grow unless the local, county, state, and federal, because it's tumbling across the borders right now, partners address this with the urgency and collaboration that it requires. In the county, we have the Sheriff's Department leading our enforcement response, the Department of Public Health pushing information resources and treatment, and the District Attorney cracking down on the distribution. Schools and educators have been really at the top of the spear. They understand our students and the challenges that they are facing. We must continue to partner with our schools to ensure information is getting not only to the youth, but also to the families. Meanwhile, we're relying on the state and federal partners for resources and broader solutions to keep fentanyl out of the communities. The county has and will continue to be lobbying the state and federal partners to take action to control the illegal inflow of fentanyl. Our local organizations like Action Family Counseling here in Santa Clarita, which has been an incredible partner, have been really working alongside the county and other local entities to make this happen. With that in mind, communication is the key, and it really does have a role to play. That is why we hosted this collaborative town hall to bring all the voices to the table. My priority has been coordinating county services and ensuring communities have information and the resources necessary in the community to combat this crisis. And I really appreciate the fact that Richard did point out, I got calls when we started to put fentanyl or provide it to the school district. By no means is this condoning illegal drug use, but we have to recognize that we have to provide all the tools necessary for our schools to protect our youth. You only have to look down the hill on campus. One child died and the other overdosed. It was thanks to Narcan that the other child was able to survive. So I think it's important for us to recognize in plain sight that we have to do more and we have to work together. So I want to thank you all for joining us here tonight. This is a subject that, again, is not just happening in Santa Clarita. It's happening throughout the county, throughout the state, and quite frankly, throughout the nation. And I want to make sure that here in Santa Clarita, we do everything we can to protect not only our youth. You saw the ages up there. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Supervisor. I also want to mention our district board member, Minister is here as well. Just a minute. Our next speaker would be the mayor, the newly elected mayor of Santa Clarita, Jason Gibbs.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for being here. Tonight's topic, it's not an easy one to address, but it is an unfortunate reality that is affecting the welfare of our youth and, quite frankly, the entire community of Santa Clarita. I want to thank Richard Budman and the Signal for putting us all here together tonight and getting this conversation started. As you know, drugs, especially fentanyl, are a top issue for local law enforcement and a very real threat to our families and our children. As a community, we must work together to eliminate drug abuse and educate one another about the dangers of drugs. And the Drug Enforcement Administration calls fentanyl the deadliest threat that our nation has ever faced. The DEA estimates that 25% of all street drugs are now laced with fentanyl. That means anytime anyone takes an illicit drug, or even what they think may just be prescription drug, they are at a serious risk for fentanyl poisoning. As a city, and through collaboration with our sheriff's department, local school districts, and other organizations, we hope to empower. We want you to have an open and honest conversation with yourselves and your family and your loved ones. We must start replacing negative messages and peer pressure with encouragement to stay strong and help our youth surround themselves with people who will create a new culture free from the influence of these outside substances. And parents who play a key role, we all play a key role in teaching children about the risks of abusing drugs and alcohol by starting that honest dialogue and discussing the consequences that drugs have on your life, on your schoolwork, and on your relationships. My hope here is that these conversations will have life-saving results, and our community will not lose any more youth to substance abuse. And I do also want to take a chance to remind our parents to encourage their teams to join the city's drug-free youth at the Santa Clarita Valley program, or better known as DEFY in the SCD. This program is in all of our local schools from elementary through high school. It empowers students to make good choices and learn positive, healthy behaviors. In a fun and engaging club setting, where students learn how to combat that negative peer pressure and acquire just these easy-to-remember strategies to simply say no to drugs and alcohol. So please visit the DEFY and the SCD website for more information, and that's at defynscd.com. So I want to thank every one of you for being here tonight, for taking that first step, for protecting one another in our community from those deadly consequences of fentanyl. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Mayor. So we have one more speaker, and then we'll get to the table discussion. We have Mr. Mike Coolman from the William S. Hart Union High School District.
Thank you, everybody. And I am Mike Coleman. I'm the superintendent, proud superintendent of the Heart District, where we serve over 20,000 students and their families in the Santa Cruz Valley. And it is my distinct pleasure to be part of many joyful moments in the lives of young people. I get to see the graduation ceremonies, the athletic accomplishments, the theatrical performances, all the joys that should be part of a young person's life. But I have to tell you, the worst part of this job, the worst of the worst, is having to deal with the death of a child. And so we are here this evening because we believe that with education and with resources and with support, that we can prevent those kinds of tragedies. And so in just a brief moment I have here this evening, we're going to hear from an expert panel, and there'll be resources that are shared both during the presentation and afterwards. And I wanted to let you know, as the Heart District, our governing board has established this issue as a top priority. We have populated our webpage with a specific link on fentanyl awareness that has links and videos and information that you can access when you leave today. You walk out into the foyer. There's a table there from the Heart District. There is a QR code that you can click on, and it'll take you to this information. And I would like to share with you an invitation on how you might use that. And I want to speak with you now, not just as a superintendent, but as a father. I'm a father of two sons that have come through the Heart District. I have two boys who are off to college now. And I will confess to you all that when this first came to light, that it occurred to me that this is probably not something that we as a family are going to be dealing with. It's not going to affect my family. And then I did my own research, and I saw these types of videos, and I realized those families are the same as my family, and they're the same as your family. And it caused me to go and have those difficult but necessary conversations with my boys about how dangerous and unique the situation is. And this website and these videos, some of which have been created by the students in our district that can speak directly to other young people, can help send that message and prevent another one of those tragedies. So I'd like to thank especially the partners that we have to work with tonight. Supervisor Barber in our county, you are always so helpful and so hands-on when we have a need as a school district and as a community. Mayor Gibbs in the city of Santa Cruz, I always feel like we are rolling in the same direction on issues of the health and welfare of the people in our district, in our community. To our law enforcement partners, thank you for always being there and recognizing that this is a common issue of concern, as well as our community partners. As well, thank you as well to Mr. Budman for seeing this as an opportunity for us to bring the community together and take action that can make a truly difference in the lives of our families. So thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. So we're going to start the panel discussion now, and then we'll have the archive distribution after that. Let me start with Carrie. If you would please introduce yourself, tell us your title, and then for the entire panel to answer this question first. What is the thing about fentanyl use that concerns you the most? And what is the one thing that needs to happen to stop this problem?
I'm Perry Washington. I'm the CEO and founder of Action Drug Rehabs or Action Family Counseling. It's good to be here. Do you want me to answer now, or do you want to just go on? Yeah. Well, before, if you don't mind, Richard, I would like to take a moment of silence for the 20 people that will lose their lives while we're here tonight. For the 20 families that will walk into the bedroom and find one of their children dead. And I see in this room right now 3 parents that I know that have done that. And we're here tonight sharing, there's people dying, and they're not, it's all preventable stuff. And I think to answer some of what Richard just said is, we have to teach people, everybody in this country right now knows that fentanyl is bad. True? We don't need to teach people fentanyl is bad. We need to teach kids that all drugs are bad. That all drugs are bad. The message is fentanyl is not the right message. All drugs are deadly today. What's going on right now is people that are overdosing, I'm sorry, are overdosing on ecstasy, that's cut with fentanyl. Overdosing on Percocet, that's cut with fentanyl. On Oxy, that's cut with fentanyl. So if we don't teach kids today all drugs are deadly, we're giving them the wrong message. These things today is what's going to save some lives. This is what's going to save some lives. So I can tell you one more thing and I'll move on, because I've been in treatment now, treating people for 40 years. That's a long time. I've seen every trend there is, from the old mini bangs to the Quaaludes to the methamphetamines to the crystal meth to the crack cocaine. And this is not like anything we have ever seen before in history. This is the most deadly thing that's ever been. It's the #1 killer right now from 18 to 45, and I say more like 16. So again, thank you for being here. And, thank you.
My name is Olivia Flores. My brother Charlie, who was 18, passed away from fentanyl. It was ecstasy he'd taken that night that ended up being cut with fentanyl. What concerns me most about this is that it's in everything. It's in weed, it's in anything you could possibly expect. Charlie didn't think of fentanyl, that he didn't do that. That wasn't him. It's not just happening to the fentanyl users, it's happening to 18-year-olds, to 17-year-olds, to my baby brother. So, my baby brother that I love more than once, so my baby brother that could turn any argument into just a hug. And I don't have that hug anymore. I have this stuffed animal. I was a stuffed animal that he gave me for going to Disneyland. And I hug him and I hold him and I pray that it feels somewhat like Charlie again. That it feels somewhat like him again. I would give anything for him back. And this is not just happening to fentanyl users, like I said, to my baby brother, to anybody just smoking weed. It's everywhere, it's constant, you can't escape it. Yes.
Just real quick, I want to just 1 second. That, Olivia, how many days clean and sober do you have?
I have 12 days clean.
Hello everyone, my name is Captain Brandon Dean. I'm the captain for the LA County Sheriff's Department Narcotics Bureau. Very strong getting up there and telling your story, thank you. I would say the thing that scares me most about fentanyl is what they previously said. Yeah, it can be laced in anything, but on top of that is just the sheer small amount of fentanyl that can be fatal. That is what's really changed the game with the illicit narcotics. I mean, all of them can be fatal. But fentanyl itself, for those that don't know, only 0.02 milligrams can be fatal. And have you ever seen what that's like? It's like a grain of salt. It's a very small amount. You know, and the DEA analysis right now initially was 40% of these pills coming across have a fatal amount. That has recently got up to 60%. So that means 6 out of every 10 pills that have fentanyl have a lethal dose. So because of its chemical makeup, it is so extremely dangerous that it's changed the game. All of illicit drugs are dangerous, right? Methamphetamine, PCP, heroin. But this one has changed the game because it only takes such a small amount to be fatal. I think, was there a second part of your question, sir?
Just,
what do we do? I think with any illicit drug problem, it's always been a 3-pronged approach, right? Regardless if it's fentanyl, methamphetamine. The first one, being the most important, is prevention, right? It's getting a message out there to everybody, because if we prevented everybody from taking these drugs, we wouldn't have to go to prong 2 and 3. You know, but unfortunately, sometimes we fail at that, and we don't prevent everybody from doing it. Problem number 2 is getting people that unfortunately do start taking these substances treatment, you know, and that's where Carrie and his people come in, is the rehabilitation factor. You know, people make mistakes, and that doesn't make them bad people. We all have family members, or community members, or friends that make mistakes, whether it's with drugs or alcohol. So the goal should be to get them into rehabilitation, get them back right, get them productive members of society, working, happy, flourishing. So rehabilitation. And the third prong is enforcement. You know, sometimes we fail at 1 and 2, and that's where we come in as a law enforcement, and we have to do our job along with our local elected officials and district attorneys and federal partnerships, and make sure that people that are selling these illicit drugs in our communities are held accountable. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Captain Justin Davis of Santa Clarita Sheriff's Station. And Richard, to your question, what scares me the most is the amount of time that you have to reverse an overdose, or I should say the lack of time. We're going to talk more about Narcan in a little bit, and we're going to do a demonstration. But if you don't get that Narcan, if you don't use that Narcan within several minutes of that overdose, unfortunately, you're going to have a death. So think about it. What do we know? What do we have in our lives that we've only got 3 minutes, right? It's very scary. It's very powerful. Before you know it, if you freeze, you don't have time to freeze. You don't have time to think. It's take action. So 3 minutes, and that's what scares me the most, Richard. Thank you.
Supervisors, the one thing that concerns you the most, and the one thing that you can do to solve.
Well, first of all, I mean, what a powerful message. I mean, that's why I say the video and all, I think that is more effective, and I wrote this down peer-to-peer. I can sit here as someone who is up in age, but peer-to-peer is what's really going to make it happen. And I know when we have the crisis going on our campuses with fentanyl, we recognize that you needed to work with the teachers and the students to identify signs that after the fact people said, I know this is something that people was going on. And I wrote this down because I want to work with the school district to put together a peer-to-peer program similar to what we do throughout the entire county. I think that is going to be one of the most effective things to do. But what keeps me up is I don't want to have to feel the pain that I feel when I hear something like when they talk about losing your brother. That's my biggest fear. We're going to have more and more of these stories. I told you I know 2 friends who have lost children. And these are not just like people that know from a distance, these are close friends. And so that is the biggest fear, is that we're going to continue to grow. And we have to do something, or we'll lose the generation.
Thank you, Richard. I say selfishly, the thing that worries me most about fentanyl in general is thinking about my own 2 children. You know, I've heard the name fentanyl actually for quite some time. My father was an anesthesiologist, and back when he retired in the late 90s, fentanyl was being used. But even then, he would tell me that it is a terrifying drug because of how powerful and how potent, and what it had the ability to do was in our life. And now we find ourselves 30 years later with a product that is readily available, that finds itself into everything. It finds itself into the lives of our innocents. And we're here today with people who have seen the worst of what happens. I remember a time in college where a good friend of mine I was with, they lost a child the same way. I believe it was fentanyl. It was an OD. And what we tend to forget is when we see the numbers, is it's not just the people, the children that you lose, it's the families that get left behind in the aftermath. I mean, I'll never forget seeing her father, who had to find their child, collapse in the closet and gone. Where the night before they were talking and chatting and living their lives, and the next day she was late for no longer there.
A lot of people on Facebook are saying,
and so I think
the speakers.
it is.
Yeah, it's on the live.
It is selfishly one of the biggest things that I've heard.
I can see it.
When you watch on Instagram, young children see it.
You can unplug it and it would just be normal.
But I think the reality is you don't solve these problems by compartmentalizing and being quiet. You need to discuss them. You need to be open about it. You need to be honest about its dangers. You need to hear from those who suffered the worst from it. And you need to have experts in the room who understand it from multiple levels. From mental levels, from medical levels, from first responder levels, and from those who fight addiction and fight it on the front line. This is how you solve these problems. You come together, you be honest about what the problem is, and then you work together to get it done. Thank you.
Thank you for having me this evening. My name is Pat Springle. I'm the Assistant Chief for Los Angeles County Fire Department, Division 3, which covers the Santa Clarita Valley, so the Santa Clarita Valley. I think the scariest part for me, for fentanyl, is probably the availability of the drug, and also the prevalence of fentanyl, as spoken about in all age groups. It's okay. All age groups, all walks of life, all social economic levels, all races. I think that's what scares me the most. I think our key to success is probably continued awareness, continued education like we're doing tonight. I would say parents, nothing replaces talking to your kids. Talking to your kids and being part of their life where you know what's going on with them. And the one thing I'll offer with here is, please remember in these types of cases, make sure we activate the 911 system. These patients need, these victims need help. They need assistance, advanced cardiac life support in the EMS system. We provide them with the care that they need in the follow-up. So make sure that we're activating the 911 system. We're not forgetting that along the way. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Jonathan Batami. I'm a child abuse prosecutor with the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. I want to let everyone know that this is not a war on drugs. This is a war and a battle to save lives. It is not a war on drugs. It is a battle to save lives. I am here for people like Carla Mendoza, who's sitting here in the front row, who lost his son Daniel, who was 20 years old, and went to one pill and died as a result of fentanyl poisoning. These children they're not overdosing, they're being poisoned, they're being tricked. I am here to be the voice of those children and those teenagers in this community who are being preyed upon by drug dealers throughout this valley and throughout this county. I'm here for people like Olivia, who may not have a voice, and people are not hearing what she has to say. We need to stand up as a community for our children, for your children, for our teenagers. Perla can tell you many of these kids, they're taking these drugs not around you, not around your parents, not around adults, and they're dying alone by themselves. And parents are walking into their room and seeing them, and they're dead. And that's a tough thing to live with. We need to fight for those parents. We need to fight for our children. So what we need to do is educate and empower the community, and that's what we're doing here today, is educating the community and empowering them so we can help our children, so we can help our teenagers, so we can help the parents who have lost children. One of the main things that we need to do is prosecute drug dealers to the fullest extent of the law. Especially these drug dealers who are killing our children and teenagers. Do you know every county outside of Los Angeles, Orange County, Riverside County, San Bernardino County, Kern County, they're all prosecuting these drug dealers with second-degree murder if you're able to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. You know the only county not doing that? Los Angeles County. Los Angeles County. If we truly believe in protecting our children and protecting our community, we need to take these drug dealers and remove them off the streets, because common sense tells you that they can't hurt anybody else when they're in custody, when they're in prison. But it's not a war on drugs. It is not a war on drugs, because what's happening is fentanyl is killing our children. So it's trying to save lives, trying to save these kids who are getting tricked into taking fentanyl. But we have to prosecute drug dealers to the fullest extent of the law. That is the only way to make sure that our future generations are protected. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm not sure you can speak after that. You got me inspired and fired up. My name is Darren Privet. I'm an emergency room physician here at Henry Mayo. And I'm grateful to be here tonight. I've been involved with the city and the FIRE program, I think, over the past 10 years. And drug awareness and education is a passion of mine. I lost my mom to a drug overdose. My wife lost her brother to heroin overdose. So it's something that's very personal to me, and it's something I'm very passionate about. And I know that Carrie mentioned this earlier, but according to the recent data, does anybody know what the most recent common cause of death is in the age group of age 18 to 45? More than trauma, more than car accidents, more than cancer, more than suicide. Fentanyl. Let me just say that again, and it's not political, or supposed to be controversial. But fentanyl overdoses in the last few years have caused more death in the age group of 18 to 45, more than COVID-19, more than car accidents, more than cancer, more than suicide. In 2020, there were over 81,000 drug overdoses in the United States in 12 months ending in May of 2020. That's the highest number of overdose deaths ever recorded in a 12-month period. We've seen this in the Santa Clarita over the past few years. We've definitely seen it in the emergency room. We know that there is a new batch of fentanyl within the community because we see a surge in opioid overdose patients presented to the emergency room. Last year alone, we saw 467 patients in the emergency room secondary to drug overdoses. 57 of those were less than the age of 15, and 410 older than the age of 15. And as mentioned, there is a war going on right now within our sacred community to save lives. And this is the war that we will not win unless we do something about it. As mentioned multiple times here tonight, fentanyl is extremely potent and deadly. It is 100 times stronger than morphine. It is 50 times stronger than heroin. Fentanyl is not a drug to try to balance or juggle the risk versus reward debate. Because of its potency, there is sometimes not a second chance. The effects of addiction and death associated with drug abuse is devastating. I cannot emphasize enough how important this town hall meeting is. How important it is to educate the community on the dangers of drugs, especially fentanyl, and the unequivocal importance that we continue to emphasize community outreach to sound the alarm and educate those regarding the dangers of drug use, abuse, and addiction, especially with fentanyl. The good news is that drug abuse is a preventable behavior, and drug addiction is a treatable disease. Preventative medicine is the best type of medicine. It starts with education, with knowledge. Knowledge is power, and it saves lives. I would suspect that if we could all prevent certain diseases such as cancer ourselves, we would all want to. But we can't prevent drug abuse. We can't prevent deaths associated with drug use simply by not using it. Thank you.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me. My name is Sid Hori. I'm a child, adolescent, adult, and addiction psychiatrist. And I'm the Associate Medical Director of Prevention and Harm Reduction for LA County Department of Public Health, Substance Abuse Prevention and Control. So lots of words. I think what scares me the most about fentanyl, as you all have mentioned so eloquently, seeing patients and then their families in the emergency room, and the number of times parents have come to me after their kids have overdosed and some have died saying they should have known better. And that's a phrase that has been burned in my mind because it's happened so many times. Within the past year, adolescent overdoses have doubled in LA County because of fentanyl. but also because we need to have more open and honest discussions around substance abuse, starting when they're very young. I constantly tell my patients and their families, prevention begins at birth. We cannot expect kids to get information from their peers, know about drugs, and then by the time they're 13, we're going to tell them drugs are bad. They're learning about drugs when they're in elementary school and then in middle school. So we need to start talking about drugs the same way we start teaching them about life. You wear helmets because you want to stay safe. Medications are things you put in your body that come from a physician, that come from your parents or pharmacists. Having those conversations early, understanding that you need to respect what you put in your body is going to make it easier to have really awkward, difficult, challenging conversations when they're 8 or 9 about what drugs are and how illicit drugs can kill you. I'm hopeful that we can do this, and I think this is a moment where we're all rallying around each other. All of these departments are working together. We're trying to get messaging out there. We're building on each other, and I think just being here and feeling all that positive energy is great. I feel like we can do this. We just have to be able to sit with discomfort and be able to sit with our kids and have really challenging conversations. And be okay with the fact that sometimes we may mess up and say things that aren't fully correct, or we may say, I didn't know about that. We may be embarrassed to talk about our own substance history, but having conversations and starting that is the most important thing.
My name is Dr. Eric Taggi, and I'm humbled to be the new public health area medical director of the San Fernando Valley, the San Pedro Valley, and the Antelope Valley. Like Dr. Privet, I was also in a regional position in LA County for 16 years. So I definitely understand Dr. Privet, and I'm sure I've had countless cases where we walk in and we just understand the effect of the family as well as everybody involved in the case. And one fentanyl death will affect hundreds if not thousands of people every day, and everybody is here. So it's something very close to my heart. And also, I'm also friends with a good family friend, Adam O'Neill, who 5 years ago also passed away from an opiate overdose. He was an electrical engineer. He was an ex-Marine. His mother was a principal in the San Fernando Valley. His father, a tenured professor in aerospace engineering at UCLA. This can happen to anybody. The one thing, when we're really thinking about the different strategies now, I'm just thinking, this is different, okay? Fentanyl is different. This is something that we didn't have to deal with 5 or 10 years ago. And the one thing I want to really stress is the difference in risk, okay? Kids actually, although they're not fully risk adverse, they understand differences in risk. And I'll give you an example. When I walked in here, there were some kids over by the stairway, and they had skateboards. And I saw one of them jump the 5 or 7 stairs over the stairway, okay? If there was 10 stairs, they would understand the increased risk of going over 10 stairs. If they knew fentanyl was like going over 200 stairs, no one would do it. And a lot of these accidental overdoses, there's no appreciation of the risk. So the one thing that parents can do is really have them appreciate the difference in the risk. And you hear the catchphrases, one pill will kill. I have one in my head is before you would get high, now you will die. Okay? So this is the difference. So kids are smart. They just don't see the risk. They don't see the 200 stairs. All they see is the pill there. So really associating that pill with doing something very dangerous, like going 150 miles a year in your car. For them to put those together, kids are smart, and that kid really can pass the best. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. We have another question, but we can keep the answers a little bit more brief because we have quite a few. The next question is, can you give an overview of what actions the county has taken to combat the fentanyl crisis? And let's start with the supervisor and then the 2 county medical doctors.
Well, I can be short on this one. I'll let the medical doctors. I mean, obviously, we're working with the school districts. To make sure that we get Narcan available to all school districts. Also, educating the community about how dangerous this drug is. And quite frankly, it's a work in progress. I mean, I appreciate the comment about enforcement and holding dealers accountable. because a lot of these drugs are coming across the border right now, and you only have to turn on the TV every day to hear about the arrest and confiscation of fentanyl at our borders, and how much it's getting to cost. And these pills are being sold as though they are, legitimate pharmaceutical quality, and they're not. You often talk about what we're doing in terms of other programs, but I know in the county we're all hands on deck, working with the community to make sure we give what is needed, the resources needed, both financial as well as with Narcan to our partners.
So our website, the public health website, if you look under substance abuse prevention and control, our main focus in public health is increasing awareness, providing education, and then linking people into treatment. So on those three arms, what we started with back in May when we had 3 West Side high school students overdose from fentanyl, we started a pretty intense campaign with school districts. What we started learning was talking to students about substances isn't as impactful as teaching students about substances and then having them be peer ambassadors to each other, creating kind of what the supervisor was talking about, which is a peer-to-peer program. So we have lectures that we've given to students who then go out to their peers on high school and college campuses now, talking about what fentanyl is, how it's in everything, and most kind of all the illicit substances that we're getting, and what we can do to prevent it. For the parent side, which I think is actually really important, we've worked with LACO and the LAUSD to create a parent ambassador program. And that's basically a 2-hour lecture that's online and available for everyone, going over the basics of fentanyl, what naloxone or Narcan is, how to use it, where to get it, but also spending a good hour on how to start these conversations with your kids. I think that's something that, again, a lot of parents will call public health about, a lot of parents of my patients will ask me about, and so I think it's really important to give everyone concrete tools on how to have those conversations, what tends to work, what tends to be more challenging. So our website has a lot of good, rich information that would be amazing to get out to the community as examples of how we do this together. We've also been working with each of the school districts to make sure they have Narcan on campus, and doing presentations now with them on how students can get Narcan, carry it with them, and know how to use it. So those are ways that we're working.
Okay. The next question can be everybody, but keep your answers to like 15, 20 seconds. What are ways parents can help their children other than talk about it?
Educate. Educate yourselves on what's going on. Knowledge is power. If you know what's going on in this world, you can talk to your kids about it. If you don't, you can't. So, and like somebody said earlier, you need to talk to them kids when they're 3 years old, not when they're 10 and 15. It's not a conversation. You say, let me tell you about your own mom, I know. It's got to be said over and over again. Your kids need to be hardwired when they're young about the dangers of drugs. Educate yourself.
I think what I would say is probably keeping an eye on that kid, what they're consuming on social media, on text messages, directly in Snapchat. Just social media in general is just influences kids to think ecstasy is okay, that cocaine is okay, these things aren't okay, but it's being fed to children like it's okay, but it's genuinely killing people, killing kids, killing everybody, killing my baby brother. Thank you.
I mean, besides honest conversations, they can hear from mom and dad, but I say bring your kids to events like this, where they can talk to people that have the courage to get up here like Olivia and talk about their own addiction or the loss of their brother. Or my friend Heidi in the audience who lost his son. And they have the courage to get up here and talk about it and have them see real people. It's one thing to hear from mom and dad, but get up here and talk to real people that have lost their loved ones and that have the courage to talk about it. And I think that's where they can really drive the point home. So.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of what Olivia said, I think we all have kids in here, probably most of us do. And are you checking their social media? I think we probably all pay their cell phone bills, right? So do you check their cell phone? Do they lock you out of your phone? Do they lock you out of their phone? Does their phone have another little face ID? You need to open it up while they're sleeping, right? You don't point it at and open it up. With your eyes closed, yeah. So you should be searching your kids' rooms, right? Are they paying rent? Are they living under your roof? Are they paying for their phone? Search their phone, search their room. What do you look for in the phone? Well, we've got our juvenile intervention team outside, and they're handing out, one of their handouts is a drug emoji chart. It would blow your mind if you see these drug emojis, stuff that probably most of the people in this room would never think of in a million years, but these certain emojis have certain meanings, and you put 3 or 4 or 5 emojis together, and they're talking in full sentences that, you know, the average Joe's not going to be able to decode, right? So check those emojis, check the social media, check their rooms. You know, can they lock you out of their room? No, of course they can't. Can they lock you out of their phone? No, of course they can't. So please, please, you know, don't pretend like nothing's going on and be proactive with that. Thank you.
So
I echo what you all said. I didn't know about the emoji.
right?
Yeah.
So I guess my perspective maybe for those who have very young children who maybe you don't think so much about the fentanyl issue and what we that have, but we're all guilty of handing over a phone or a device when you need a moment. You know, my son is really into the little YouTube shorts, and we put every child protection thing you can put on there, but you've got to keep your ears open. Every once in a while you hear something, what in the world was that? It's not something that you should be seeing. So the other thing, besides educating and investing in your kids, is make that honest recognition to yourself that there are things you don't know. And I think it's very important tonight when we talk about having the Narcan demonstration. You know, right now it's just talked about as it's a nasal spray. But seeing how it's used, seeing what actually happens when someone is looked in and when they're down, it's important to see what the real situation is going to look like and not just talk about it at the top level. So for myself, I've never seen that. I'm looking forward to that demonstration. Thank you.
So there's already been spoken about, but what I would say as a parent and as us as parents being a parent, I would say we need to reprioritize our lives and make the kids and the kids' education the priority number one. There's a lot of things we can do outside of our daily routine, but let's make sure that our youth are our priority. It's really our responsibility.
What Justin and Olivia said is right on. The dealers are selling Percocet and other types of pills through Snapchat, through social media, through the internet. And so kids, you know, are buying these pills through social media, and they'll come and deliver them to a teenager's house, or they can go to the dealer's house and get them. You know, they're $20 or $30. Sometimes they're a little bit more. And you know, they're taking these pills. And these pills are laced with fentanyl. And then children, teenagers are dying. So you really have to be paying attention to what they're doing on their cell phones, because that's how the dealers are working through our communities and selling those goods to the kids. You also need to watch your kids' grades. If your kids are getting good grades and all of a sudden they start getting bad grades, something's going on. If your children and teenagers are starting to hang out with different crowds, different types of people that you don't know, something's going on. If you don't know who your teenagers' friends are, there's a problem. So as a parent, you need to be paying attention to who their peers are. Most people in these type of peer groups, you know, a lot of times there's other peers in that group that are also doing drugs. And so you really have to pay attention to that. You also really want to pay attention to their demeanor and their attitude when they come home, how they're eating, their diet, if their diets change, if they're staying out late at night, if they're staying up early in the morning, if their sleep habits have changed. All those things, you know, should say there's something going on with my child, there's something up. You also need to tell your kids and be honest about it. If you take drugs from a friend, marijuana, Percocet, a pill, or anything, it could easily be laced with fentanyl. Maybe your friend doesn't even know that. That's the problem, is friends are taking drugs from other friends, teenagers who have pills and hand one to a friend. And the problem is that any pill can be laced with fentanyl. I don't think the teenagers should even be taking aspirin or Excedrin or anything from school to let you know exactly where that came from. It came from a bottle. You should teach your kids, because we used to, all of us would take all sorts of pills, right? But teenagers should not be taking any type of pills from anybody unless they know it's from a bottle. And that's the problem, is they're being tricked. They're being poisoned, and they don't know it. And just like I said about the risk, kids have seen other kids take Percocet. And so they're like, oh, this is no big deal, I'm not take Percocet, Kids see parents smoking marijuana all the time, especially here in California. And marijuana has been laced with fentanyl. And that's the problem. We need to all set the example and watch our kids and what they're doing.
Before you go, it's not just pills. Let's remember to teach our kids cookies, baked goods, gummies, all that stuff too.
I gotta try to follow this guy in. Kerry says this a lot. He always, when we do these symposiums, he always says, like, what's the national average that kids spend with their parents? How much face time per day do you think spends with their parent? 10 minutes. Give her a treat. Right? It's not an hour, it's not 2 hours. You think it's quite a long time. Yeah, I'm a parent. I spend so much time with my kids. The national average is 10 minutes. When they come home, what is that 10 minutes? How was your day? How things going? You had your homework? Yeah, done. Boom. Right back in the room on the phone with your friends.
Yeah, that's my life.
I know. We've been doing this too long, buddy.
I'll do the best of it.
And the old adage that families that eat together stay together. And that is so true. In fact, that most families that have conversations about drug use, most families that spend time together, most families that eat together, there's a 50% decrease in drug use among those teenagers. So spend quality time with your children. And that's probably the biggest advice I can give parents who come in the emergency room and their child has overdosed or who has intoxicated or high on marijuana. They just cannot believe that Johnny had ever done this. Guy did his first time. Well, I'm telling you, it's not. This is just the first time to the point where he's had to come to the emergency room, and now you're aware of it. And so you've got to get involved and invested in your children. And I tell my kids all the time, I have 4 children, I'm like, if you want me to get under the bus, you tell your kids, your friends, tell your kids so they can tell their friends that, look, if they're going to try to give you drugs, I can't. My parents are going to test it when I come home.
That's right.
And even though I'm an emergency physician and I would never think that my kids would do drugs, you better believe I have drug tested my kids.
Come on.
And you should have seen the look on your face. How dare you do that? You don't trust me? I go to church every Sunday. I don't care.
Come on.
Get in this truck. I'm your dad. I'm not your best friend.
Come on.
And that's the important thing to remember.
Yeah, I have a 3-year-old, so that's something else. So the one thing I would add to what Clarita said is actually talk to your kids' friends when they're all together and get a feel for the group. So they come over, what do you think about these drugs around the street? You can tell real quick. They should be saying, you know what, I don't take that stuff, you can die, I know people that die. If they're like, no, you're not acting like you would expect, that's when you have a conversation. Right there. Kids do things together. There's group thinking for doing dangerous things, so that if they're going to have an accidental overdose, they need to have an accidental overdose together. So they can all be talking about it and put it all on the table, so when they're by themselves and they have that situation come up, they're going to remember, hey, remember when Johnny's mom said this and said that. Secondly, there's other groups. There's the kids that are going to do it accidentally and pass away. And then there's the kids with issues that we discussed here, substance abuse and depression. There's a different strategy for that. Parents need a lot more help when it comes to those situations. Okay? There are resources that are available in our area in Santa Clarita. There is a LA County resources out there for the Antelope Valley that we provided out there, done by Health Education Sheriff Department of Public Health. So I want to thank them for what they did on that. And we're going to make one for the Santa Clarita as well. But there's places like the Santa Clarita Mental Health Center, the Child Family Center, and then there's 5 Northeast Valley centers that also deal with mental health and with substance abuse. So when you need help in those situations, if you can gauge that, that's time the parents actually need to reach out and get help, and they really should do that. Thank you so much.
Okay, so let's do this for the captains that are here. Will kids get caught distributing fentanyl and charged with a felony, since this drug is so deadly, it's attempted manslaughter?
That's probably a better question for the DA, but we'll take it. So, I mean, obviously selling a controlled substance is a felony. So, now to charge someone with manslaughter, I'll kind of segue with that question a little bit. So recently, in the LA County Sheriff's Department, we started something back in July of this year called the Overdose Response Task Force. You know, our main goal in Narcotics Bureau is obviously narcotics enforcement, going after low-level dealers, mid-level dealers, and high-end drug trafficking organizations. So last year alone, we seized 3.2 million fentanyl pills and just over 500 pounds of fentanyl powder. This week alone, just in 2 days, we started work on Tuesday this week and get off on Monday, we've seized 9 kilos of fentanyl powder. So 1 kilogram is 2.2 pounds. 1 kilogram is enough to kill 500,000 people. So you can see what we're dealing with. Now, I think on your question, will they be charged with manslaughter? So that's something different, you know, okay, so no problem. So our main goal is obviously going after low-level dealers, mid-level dealers, and high-end drug trafficking organizations. But something I'm very proud of is, like I said, in July of this year, we kind of changed our mindset a little bit and started the Overdose Response Task Force. In those particular incidences, we have a team of 10 very highly skilled investigators, and we treat them now as homicide investigations on overdoses. So if we have an overdose, we send investigators out to the scenes on most cases, or they end up working the case the next day. And if we are able to identify that person or persons that sold that controlled substance and the cause of death ends up being fentanyl toxicity, we are seeking either 21841 of the U.S. Government Code, which is distribution that led to a death, which carries a 20-year minimum sentence, or we are presenting it to the DA's office for second-degree murder charges. So I think that answers the question.
John, you want to take 10 seconds?
Sure. I mean, the Sheriff's Department, they're doing their job. They're out there, and what happens is they arrest people. Then it has to go to the DA's office, and the DA then has to decide if they're going to charge somebody. Second-degree murder is reckless disregard for the safety of others. And so we use that for certain types of DUI charges. So if you repeatedly commit DUIs and you kill somebody, we then charge them with second-degree murder because it's reckless disregard for the safety of others. So a lot of the elected DAs in California got together and said, hey, we need to do this with fentanyl. If dealers are out there and they're knowingly selling pills laced with fentanyl to teenagers or individuals, and those people are dying as a result of that, that's reckless disregard for the safety of others. The only county that refuses to do that is LA County. And so that's the problem. So if we don't charge manslaughter, we charge a second-degree murder, which in the state of California is reckless disregard for the safety of others. And so a lot of the cases that the sheriffs have been getting, they've been bringing it to the feds. That is not how the system's supposed to work. We're the county of Los Angeles. The DA's office employs, almost 1,000 deputy district attorneys, which is taxpayer money. We're supposed to be prosecuting Santa Clarita's felonies. And if somebody's selling fentanyl to a teenager or to a person, and they knowingly do that, and you can prove that, and they kill somebody, we should charge that as second-degree murder. We're just not doing it. The DA refuses to do that. So all of you need to put pressure on the district attorney, because that's the person not doing the job of the district attorney. But that's what the charge should be. And here's the thing, if you can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, you should charge that charge. It's an appropriate charge. Everybody knows if you sell fentanyl to somebody, you can kill that person. Fentanyl kills. That's what it does. And we should charge that charge. But the Sheriff's Department is doing their job. They're taking cases to the feds. But that's really not how the system's supposed to work here in Los Angeles County. the district attorney's office is supposed to prosecute those cases. And if Riverside is doing it, if San Bernardino is doing it, if Orange County is doing it, if Kern County is doing it, why isn't Los Angeles County doing it? What do you think the dealers are going to do? They're going to come sell here, right? That's what they do. Crime has no boundaries. They're going to come here to Los Angeles and they're going to prey on our children. They're going to prey on our children. Think about that.
Yeah.
This is a question for the supervisor. I'll put you on the spot. How can we make more detention centers more available for victims of drug use? How can we make more detention centers more available for victims of drug use?
We're in the midst of working on that now, and actually, it goes beyond that. No, it also goes to homelessness. There are those that will say you can house people and homeless will go away, but I'm here to tell you, and I know Perry would agree. Addicts eventually hit rock bottom and end up homeless. And so we are working right now to address that issue, but it's not just about beds. And again, I think Perry can agree with this as well. We have to change the laws as it relates to how we fund those beds. Because I don't know, Carrie, if someone can really get the help they need in 30 days.
Oh, it's not really 30 days.
I know.
It's more like you get 3 days,
right,
and you fight for 3 more, and
right,
you fight for 7 more, if you're lucky.
So we're working right now, I'm working right now actually to address that issue both on the state and federal level, but also to increase the number of beds, and also increase the number of mental health beds. Because right now, if especially a child were to, a parent would look for a bed for a child in need of mental health care, you would spend days. That is an area where we have the least amount of beds. And COVID showed us that there's the greatest need right now in that community, and which then does feed into the fentanyl because they end up self-medicating. And that is also my greatest fear.
This next one is for Carrie and Dr. Privet. Can you talk about what specific things to look for as warning signs for potential substance abuse or overdose?
Sure. Changing grades, changing friends, changing attitude, isolation, little anger bursts, all those kind of telltale signs. But really the biggest thing that you want to do is go with your gut, because if you think that your child has a problem, they do. And for anyone out there that thinks maybe, do I have a problem, you have to think that you do. So the bottom line is go with your gut and get it checked out. We could get anybody drug tested and bring one to Santa Clarita. Action Drug Rehab and test your kid anytime for free. Just show up anytime.
I think the DA summarized that too, of the telltale signs that you could look for. If there's any change at all in your child's behavior, I mean, your antenna should be going up. And let's face it, our kids were devastated with COVID. We locked schools down, we took their activities away. And even someone like me who had resources, and my 4 children, 2 of my oldest are still struggling. And I was screaming about how many pediatric patients we were seeing in the emergency room with depression. And you will not believe the rates of suicide in this valley the last 2 or 3 years that we've had with our pediatric population because of the effects of COVID. And mutually, because now they're risk aversion, they are using drugs. And so we have to really focus on these children because COVID really, really took its toll and effect on them. And so make sure that we're very invested and aware of our children, and any type of change in their behavior, something's going on.
Go with your gut. Okay, thank you. We just have time for a couple more quick ones. So for whoever wants to answer this, what is rainbow fentanyl and why should it concern us? That's
What do you guys think? It's pretty simple.
Sure, yeah. I mean, rainbow fentanyl, for all of you guys that have seen it, it's just, it's fentanyl. You know, the pills, the M30s, oxycodone pills that are colored. You know, I'm sure a lot of you guys saw the story a few months back. The LA Sheriff's Department interdiction team at the airport caught some people coming across. They had Whoppers, Skittles, Starburst packages. So I don't know if they're doing rainbow pills to target younger kids, or if it's more so for detection purposes. I mean, if you see a Skittles package and you see all blue pills in there, most people know Skittles come in multiple colors, so they kind of keep moving along. But if you see multiple colored pills, it's easier to avoid detection from law enforcement because it looks like candy. But you know, there's also that thing that they could be targeting a younger crowd because they're colorful, paint, green, different colors. So all rainbow fentanyl is basically your fentanyl pills, your M30 oxycodones that are different colors. The standard pills come in like a light blue, and rainbow comes in all different colors: green, yellow, red, and orange. Yes, ma'am.
Can dogs smell it?
Fentanyl?
Yeah.
Yes.
For Dr. Purdy, what resources are available to parents, students, and educators to protect them from risks of fentanyl?
Well, I think this might be a better question for General Neston.
So like I was saying earlier, I think the most important thing to know is that there are resources out there. So if you're not sure how to start the conversation with your kid, we have a bunch of videos on there that give you specific examples. We have toolkits out there, so if you specifically want resources for mental health, how to get kids connected if we're concerned about things like depression, anxiety, PTSD, or even ADHD, all of those that increase their risk for substance use disorder and fentanyl overdose. Those are out there. For students, we have a lot of resources on peer-to-peer navigators, how to talk to your peers about substances. If they're concerned about a friend, how to go about it. There's other harm reduction services out there, so if you're concerned and want to test your kids for substances, there's resources for that. There's also resources for fentanyl test strips. So I think coming from a perspective where we know drugs aren't necessarily going anywhere, it's a public health issue that we have to contend with. How do we keep people safe? One of those ways is fentanyl test strips, and those are very cheap strips you can buy online that will actually test the substance for fentanyl. The caveat is fentanyl likes to stick together in a substance. And so if you have a pill, think of it like a chocolate chip cookie, where the fentanyl is kind of like the chocolate chips in a cookie. So if you take a part of the pill and you test it, it may turn out negative. But in fact, there's still fentanyl in other parts of it. So you have to crush, make sure it's a very fine powder before you test it. But that's another available resource that's out there, just in case we want to keep our kids safe in a way that we know if they're going to experiment, they should do so safely.
Yeah, and I would suggest that to make sure that all of our children are aware of the FIGHT and SCV, the clubs that they have at every high school and also junior highs, and I know we're extending into the elementary schools as well. It's a great program. As mentioned earlier, it's so important that we instill students and children with information, because the most impact they can have is from peer-to-peer influence on each other. And this provides an opportunity for the children to get information, to be involved in activities, to be aware of drugs and the effects of the drugs and what resources are out there. And especially for parents too. Go to the website. There are videos on there, there's information on there to help you have those conversations with your children, just like there is apparently with the county. And as far as other resources out there, I know that Carrie can talk a little bit about what resources are available in the community.
We have a parent team support group here Tuesday night at Zero Vista. It's at 7 o'clock, and everyone's welcome to do that. There's all kinds of different videos. There's Dead on the Rifle that Henry put together. There's so many different things out there. If you really need to ask them the questions, don't hesitate to drop by our office with them.
Okay, for Captain Diaz. I assume we are seeing drugs in junior high school, but wonder if the elementary schools are seeing drugs as well.
Yeah, great question. So obviously, absolutely, it's in the high schools and junior high schools. We've had a couple incidents in our local elementary schools. However, I believe after the investigations done, then it came back as fentanyl. They were either edibles or some type of marijuana-laced either vape or something of that nature. So I don't think we quite have a problem yet. And I say yet because I'm afraid that could certainly be the case in the near future. So again, please continue to speak to your young kids. And then the next question is, well, what's, how young is too young? I know Jason was talking about his kids, but how young is too young? Typically we're starting to see 5th grade, right? 4th grade, 5th grade, right in there. 6th grade, don't even wait until 6th grade or 7th grade, the earlier the better. Thank you.
Yeah, we just had to too. Seriously.
Okay. We should really be talking to the younger kids too about vaping. We used to talk so much about marijuana as a gateway drug. Now we have a gateway to a gateway. And it starts with these children. Nicotine is a drug. And these companies are smart. And they make these flavors, and these kids enjoy what they're doing. And it just allows them to take one step further and to experiment. And it kind of conditions the behavior and allows them to open their risk behavior to try different things, and it's an easy progression from vaping to marijuana, from marijuana to other drugs. So make sure that we're focused on elementary kids, especially with vaping. I know the Park School District has really focused on that. We've had multiple discussions about that. And so for elementary kids and those who are younger, make sure we're talking to them about the danger of vaping.
Yeah, one thing I want to add about that, if you know your child vaping, that's a bad decision. And once you identify your children making bad decisions, they may make other bad decisions. And now there's a huge bad decision they can make out there by taking a pill. So like those 10 middle schoolers that were taking the edibles, that's concerning. Because what else would they have done? They didn't know if they could do edibles. Maybe they thought it was something else. It could have been fentanyl. If it was fentanyl, probably 10 of them could have passed away. So those are other signs.
So we have time for one more question. There's quite a few other questions. I'm sure you can ask the panelists afterwards. We'd be happy to discuss it with you. If we can keep this to just 15-second answers because we have the maritime demonstration coming up. Let's see. If a kid turned 18 or a young adult getting therapy for mental health, they're now 18, a lot of behavior issues, and seems to be on the edge, and will, I think, do any substances. How can I help? I always hear I am 18. So I guess she wants help to know her child is 18. What can she do?
I don't think 18 is a magic number. I mean, they're still our children. And if they're living in our house, they're still under our control. And if they need help, we can do anything we can to get between that kid and the danger that they're in. So I would seek help and make appointments and go from there. And go with your gut. If you think your kid's got an issue, your kid's got an issue.
I have to agree with Karen on that. If my mom had known the littlest bit about Charlie, that he was taking ecstasy, he was doing quote-unquote party drugs, she would have been able to probably say, was that repeated? If she had done any more. So I think it's important to talk about these things and figure these things out and to really, truly understand that it's the most minuscule of things. Doesn't matter how gateway it could be, it's in everything. Okay.
I'll tell you what, just because you said that, I'm only rehabs and running as long as I can. Alcohol is still one of the most dangerous drugs there is. There's a 30-something% mortality rate for somebody that's addicted to alcohol without medical attention. Well, let's not forget alcohol, you're right.
Thank you. Now Dr. Curry can come up and do the narrative demonstration.
Okay, so out in the front, we have Narcan packages for everyone. Each Narcan box is going to have a QR code that links to a video from the California Department of Public Health that will go over this as well. But I want to make sure you all can know about it before you get it. So you'll know how to use it in case, and you can also explain it to your kids and also look at the video. So each Narcan box comes with 2 Narcan doses. The dose looks like this, and it's 4 milligrams of intranasal Narcan. There's a PowerPoint, but I don't know if it's ready, but I'll just tell you what, oh, perfect, awesome. Next slide. Okay, perfect. So naloxone, also known as Narcan is a brand name, but naloxone is a drug. Essentially what naloxone does is there's a receptor in the brain that all of those drugs, all the opioids, fentanyl, stick on. Narcan will kick that off. And basically what it'll do is reverse an overdose to allow a person to breathe. This has to happen within the first 3 to 5 minutes because that's when we start seeing brain death. Then you go to a coma, and then you go to death. Next slide. Perfect. Okay, so now we all know what the packaging looks like. Front and back. Next slide. How to administer. Okay, so this is going to be really important. So you're at a scene, you're going to save someone's life. You see that they've overdosed, so their pupils are really small, they're not breathing, they have a very faint heart rate, maybe they're cold and clammy, their nails are turning a little blue. You're going to go, I'm concerned this is an opioid overdose, I have my Narcan with me. You're going to first peel it back, so peel it back, take it out. When you take it out, this is how it's going to look. So this is a sample we've used a lot that is now on this last slide. So what almost looks like the Star Trek kind of thing. You're going to place it, you're going to hold it like this. So you have your middle finger and your thumb around it with your index finger right next to the bottom. You're going to place this in the person's nostril. When you find someone there, you want to make sure you lay them on their back, make sure their neck is up so their airway is as straight as possible. That's how they're going to get back to breathing quickly. You place this in their nostril, and I'll do it just because it's a demonstration, and then you're going to plunge or press the Narcan thing, the Narcan plunger. It's 1 dose. What you don't want to do is test it before you put it in someone's nostril. So the minute it's in their nostril, you press it, that's the dose. It's dead after that. Each one has 1 dose in it, so you're also not going to do half in one nostril, half in another. In about 30 to 60 seconds, if it's an opioid overdose, the person should come back. I usually wait like 60 seconds. If it doesn't, that's why there's a second dose in that box. You take it, you put it out, place it in the other nostril, and you press it. At that point, they should start breathing. When you're doing that, if someone else is around, have them call 911 immediately, right? So we know that this is going to save their life, but if they need other medical attention, they need to go to the emergency room to make sure that everything else is okay. Next. Naloxone, you are protected by carrying naloxone and by using naloxone in an emergency situation with the Good Samaritan law. So know that you can't be arrested for using it, you can't be prosecuted for doing something in good faith to help save someone's life. Next slide. Okay, clarifying misconceptions. So I get this a lot in the emergency room as well. People ask, well, if I'm giving them Narcan, isn't that addictive as well? No, it's the antidote. So it's going to reverse an overdose and save a life. It doesn't cause the effects of an opioid. So like I said before, it kind of knocks off the opioid, blocking it, so you don't get any of the effects. You don't get the euphoria, you don't get the pain control. None of that happens with Narcan. Using Narcan or having access to Narcan doesn't increase the risk of substance use. It increases the saving lives. So it's not going to increase or let someone or encourage someone to use substances. We've had some kids say that they've been using Narcan before they use substances because they're like, oh, if it's in my body, it will protect me from an overdose. That is absolutely not correct. So if your kids are like, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be safe by using Narcan before I try a pill, it doesn't work. The reason it's not going to work is Narcan stays in your system for about 30 to 60 minutes. It may take an hour for an opioid that you're ingesting in some way to work. So it's not going to work. It's not going to prevent an overdose if you're going to take something after it. It's also important to know that this doesn't reverse an overdose caused by something else. So if someone's passed out from drinking, from taking a benzodiazepine like Xanax, or if they've taken meth, or if they have another like psychedelic like ketamine, LSD, PCP, and they're passed out because of that, this won't do anything. It'll be like injecting water in their nose. The expiration date. So all of them come with an expiration date. If it's stored in a cool, dry place, I would extend that expiration date by a couple of years. Any Narcan is better than no Narcan. So we have studies looking at putting Narcan in extreme temperatures, both cold and hot. Even after those, it's working 95%. So it's still working. So it can still be used even after the first fire. Okay, responding to an overdose. 4 R's I want you to remember. So recognize, respond, reverse, and remain. We'll go through them really, really quickly. So recognize. So this is, you're going to check for responsiveness. So if you think someone's overdosed, you're going to notice their breathing is infrequent, they're snoring or gurgling, and there's something called the death rattle that we've probably all heard. And it sounds like something is lodged in the throat. They're really trying to breathe out. It's like a really, really scary sound when you hear it. You'll know. Their skin is pale and clammy. They're not responding to you. So if you're even doing a sternal rub, which is where you take your knuckles and rub it in between the breastbone, very, very hard. They're not responding to that. Their heart rate is very slow, and then, again, they're completely unresponsive. That's checking for responsiveness. That's likelihood of an opioid overdose. You want to respond. You want to call 911. Hopefully, and when you call 911, I always tell people to be very specific on what they're seeing and where they are. So I'm with a person who is not breathing, they're not responding. That's enough to get 911 there. Just say where you are as specifically as possible. So I'm on the 3rd floor of this building, the south side. Stay on the phone with them as if you can, and then administer the Narcan like we just demonstrated. We're going to peel it, place it, press it. If they don't respond, I say within 60 seconds, give the other dose. Remain with them. So if they're unresponsive even after the 2nd dose, put them in the recovery position so they're at least they're as protected as possible. People often ask about rescue breathing and CPR. In the age of COVID, this is really tricky. It really comes down to a personal decision. If you are trained in CPR and comfortable doing it, you can do that. If you haven't been trained in CPR, I recommend everyone get trained in CPR so you're able to do that. Don't leave the scene. Remain with the person. So when they come out of an overdose, oftentimes, and I've seen about close to 200 people be reversed now, both kind of in the hospital and on the streets. People are like, oh my God, they're agitated, they'll punch you. 99% of the time, they're very, very scared, right? They've just gone through something really, really traumatic. So what's important to tell them is, hey Sid, I noticed you weren't breathing. I didn't know what was going on. I thought you may have overdosed. I gave you Narcan. You are here with me. 911 is on the way. Let me give you a moment. So reassure them in a really positive, safe way that you've given them a medication, you're waiting with them. What not to do. So please don't slap them, don't shake them, that can cause other injury. Don't put them in a bath or a shower. You've got to remember if they're not breathing, they can't protect their airway so they can drown. Don't inject them with other substances. So people will be like, oh, I injected him with methamphetamine because he took an opioid. That's not great either. Don't try to make them vomit. Again, if they can't protect their airway, that's going to lead to further vomiting. Okay, so any delay in naloxone can result in death. So just give the naloxone. That's all. And the additional resources we have outside.
I have a question.
Yes.
Someone's not breathing. My instinct and training would be to do CPR before fentanyl. Mm-hmm. Wasn't there a case of police officers or first responders that did that and died from the fentanyl that was in the person's mouth?
Oh, if they did CPR and there was still a amount of fentanyl that you could then ingest. So I've heard of one case of that. Generally, what we want to do is, if you suspect an overdose, start with Narcan, call 911. Yes. That's probably the safest thing you can do. So if you're not comfortable doing CPR, and if there's one case that I know of, there is a possibility of that. Narcan 911 is the best thing you can do.
Yeah, but they can still do the chest compressions.
They can do chest compressions.
And don't do the mouth to mouth.
Yeah, just don't do mouth to mouth. And kind of honestly, chest compressions are better than mouth to mouth.
Yeah. Yes.
If you've given somebody their first dose of the Narcan and you're not sure if they're responding, can you give them too much if you give them the second one?
No. You can give as much. And again, if it's not related to an opioid, it's doing nothing to them. It's just like the water. But if it's if there was a lot of fentanyl, or fentanyl can kind of if they're using fentanyl for a very long time and it hangs out in our fat, sometimes we do need more naloxone or Narcan. So that's another reason to make sure you use both doses. Yeah, totally.
I have one question.
Yeah.
If you administer the Narcan and it's successful and the person comes back,
Is there a possibility that they can go back under if they have enough fentanyl resistance?
So yeah, so chronic fentanyl users, and this is different than kind of like the accidental overdoses we're seeing here, but patients who are using chronic fentanyl for months or years, but like as just said, fentanyl kind of hangs out in the fat and it seeps out slowly. So there's a recurrence of a re-overdose, which again is why it's really important to call 911, especially when it's someone you don't know and someone who has a history that can be more complicated. Because if that happens, they're going to need more Narcan, possibly in like an ICU or an inpatient setting too.
I just wanted to add that in Denver, Narcan, I don't know if anybody knows that, he came out of a lecture he was giving, and there's a gentleman who was on the side dying. Why suppose he gets the Narcan? So the inventor goes over there and they have it all on tape, so if anybody wants to see it the first time, it was amazing.
It's great.
Save yourself. The inventor,
So we have a real quick video, and then we'll have some closing remarks, and then we'll demonstrate the distribution.
It's common knowledge by now that fentanyl is a dangerous and deadly drug. What many of us don't know is how it can help in the med. After all, the drug is obviously dangerous, and yet after all the PSAs and drug safety videos, the issue still persists. I need to tell you that anyone can help, no matter who you are. There are resources and precautions that you can take that might just save someone's life. Narcan, or naloxone, is one such precaution. Opioids like fentanyl bond with receptors in the brain that revolve around emotions and pain. The nasal spray Narcan is designed to counteract these effects and is supposed to help with these opioid overdoses. Anyone who wishes can purchase this medication from their local pharmacy without needing a prescription. The nasal spray is easy to use and can be administered in emergency situations by simply placing the nozzle in the patient's nose and pressing the plunger down completely so as to enact the spray. If you're worried about a sibling, a cousin, a friend, or even just want to do your part in helping fight off this drug, having Narcan at the ready is one of the best ways to help.
All right, if Supervisor Barrett can come up and give us some closing remarks.
I'll sit right here. If you look back here in the back, the heart, that's a defibrillator. And that is a common, you go into most public buildings, you'll see it. We're now talking about doing the same for Narcan. And when I look at this ad, this is exactly the reason why. I thank you all for being here. This is the first of what I think are going to have to be many discussions about this. But please know, I'm really proud to have, be a part of the county family and to hear the two experts from public health come and talk. But we're all in this together. And there is no question that this time next year, someone in this room is going to be impacted by it. I want to be that person that helps bridge the discussion, communication. Listen to your children, know what's going on in their lives. And I just want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here tonight. Thank you.
If you have additional questions, you can send an email to share@signalscv.com, and we'll get it to the panel to answer for you. And now there'll be the distribution of Narcan is outside in the foyer. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for viewing, everybody. Have a good night.
Oh, Juliet?